Welcome to the virtual Silverstone here in Assetto Corsa Competizione for the CrowdStrike Racing League here tonight. My name is Kyle Heyer, joined by Ryan Marine for the CrowdStrike Cup Virtual Racing League for friends and family to connect while we all work from home. CrowdStrike and AWS have been leaders in securing a remote workforce since long before the pandemic, and they can race remotely too and are glad to have staff and their friends from SRO take part tonight. Again, tonight is our third round of the season, this time from Silverstone here in the UK. Bright and sunny. We've got two races coming up tonight with CrowdStrike friends, family, staff all here racing in GT cars in Assetto Corsa Competizione. And got Ryan Marine alongside me again. Ryan, welcome. Our third round of the season. We've been to Barcelona. That was the previous round. That one was pretty entertaining. This week, though, a little flatter, a little sunnier, and racing here at Silverstone.
Silverstone, one of the classic circuits, definitely one of the more historic Grand Prix circuits, and GT Racing has a lot of heritage here as well, so should be a really fun setting. It's a former Air Force base for the Royal Air Force converted into a racetrack. You wouldn't know it by looking at it, but it does have that heritage and has been host to some historic moments in the history of motorsports, and excited to be at the virtual Silverstone here. A great place to follow up on the Nürburgring and then Barcelona the last time out.
Racing season kicked off a couple weeks ago with the 24 Hours of Daytona. We had, of course, a CrowdStrike-sponsored machine out there with George Kurtz competing in the LMP3 category. So the season is sort of unofficially kicked off in my mind, but the Virtual Racing League will continue here for CrowdStrike. Of course, in 2021, CrowdStrike's goal is to win as one. When it comes to cybersecurity, we're all on one team with one fight to beat the adversary and stop data breaches. CrowdStrike is the official internet and cloud security provider of the Fanatec GT World Challenge America, powered by AWS. That's another thing that's exciting going into the year here, Ryan, is the partnership with Fanatec. Sim racing hardware teaming up with the Real World Challenge in the real world. That is an exciting thing for me to see as a fan of both real-world racing and sim racing, kind of putting those two things together. But qualifying underway for our two races tonight. We've got Pro coming up first, then our AM race. We'll talk to a special guest a little bit later tonight as well. That will be Diesel Lauder. He'll be joining us for the AM race. But qualifying underway, we've got 17 drivers laying down some lap times here.
And the differentiation here between the Pro and the AM races, basically it's just how much do you want to put into your Assetto Corsa Competizione competition effectively. The Pro class are for the more experienced sim racers or those that want to spend a bit more time trying to prepare and prepare for real wheel-to-wheel action, whereas the AM is going to be a bit more laid back, a bit more relaxed. Nevertheless, we've seen good competition in both in the two previous rounds, and a good car count here in the first race of the evening, the Pro race, with 17 cars set to take the grid, and a nice mix of machinery as well. Looking at the ticker there on the left-hand side of the screen, Ferrari, Honda, McLaren, Mercedes, Porsche, as well as the Bentley we saw a little while ago, and there's just a great mix of cars out on the track, and that's what you come to expect in GT3 racing.
Absolutely, and here is one of the Mercedes AMG GT3s. This is Sam Michaels in that gorgeous CrowdStrike livery. CrowdStrike Racing this year has a few more cars entering the grid, Ryan. There's a handful more, and a couple of those changes involve CJ Moses, who ran a TCR effort last season in TC America, is now going to be moving to GT America, powered by AWS. We'll be racing the number 58 CrowdStrike AWS DXDT Racing Mercedes AMG GT3. Kevin Bohm moving up from TCA into the TC category in the number 9 CrowdStrike Racing AWS Civic Type R TCR. Both CJ and Kevin will race with CrowdStrike Racing with track support from DXDT. Also Aaron Vogel and Michael Cooper joining in GT3 as well. So a lot of new entries, new cars, car changes for CrowdStrike Racing this year. And what a way to kind of bring on the new year with one of these Mercedes AMG GT3s, run it in the sim before we see it out on the racetrack in real life.
It's a beautiful livery, and there'll be plenty of them, like you made allusion to, when we get to the first race of the season here in a couple of weeks out at Sonoma Raceway in California. And it's worth noting, George Kurtz, of course, is back with DXDT Racing. His co-driver once again will be Colin Brown. David Askew and Ryan Dial return in another DXDT Racing car. And I actually talked to David just a couple of days ago, and they're very excited about what this upcoming season has in store. He's really proud of what he's built, and feels like George coming on board and showing the intention to contend for a championship. They came very close to a Pro-Am championship last year, George Kurtz and Colin Brown, that is, and that kind of signals where this team is headed. They've relocated from their base in Utah to the Mooresville, North Carolina area, Statesville to be specific. A lot of motorsports talent in that part of the country, and with the expanded presence on the grid, they've got really high hopes, big-time aspirations, not just for this year, but for the future of that team as a whole, and of course, CrowdStrike a big part of that.
And coming off of an extremely successful year in 2020, 25 podiums last season in of course, GT World Challenge America and TC America, 4 in GT3, 4 wins, I should say, 6 in TCA, 4 wins in Winter Invitational, 8 second-place podiums, 3 third-place podiums, a handful of trophies and victories and podiums all season long. Expect to see many more of those in 2021. Of course, as you mentioned, the season starting at Sonoma Raceway here in a couple weeks. And for most of the season, you'll be able to follow along with myself and hopefully some of the drivers joining you for a virtual event here on the CrowdStrike Racing channel. So as we continue here in qualifying, on board with Bill Clark running those classic Porsche liveries that always looks good. What do they call this? The Pink Pig or something along the lines of that, Ryan?
That is exactly right. The Pink Pig, a classic Porsche livery.
Looking really good.
It even says it right there below Bill's name.
It certainly does. In the 92 down through turn number 1. While we've got a moment here, let's actually have a look here at the racetrack we're at. Of course, this is Silverstone Circuit here in Northamptonshire, UK. That is the most British-sounding name that you could possibly put a place in. 5.8 kilometers of racetrack. Of course, this is the home racetrack for Lewis Hamilton, who also has CrowdStrike adorning the side of his car for 2021, going for a record 8th championship in the Formula One series this upcoming year. Having a look down at the racetrack, though, we're running a slightly different layout from the one that Formula One runs. We've got the old pit front straight with turn 1 being cops at the top left of your screen, then the run through Maggots and Beckett's, a very fast left-right combination, of which Circuit of the Americas actually modeled its S's after. Then the run down to Stowe, a long right-hand turn into the tight section down at Club, then another fast right-hander through Abbey, a very tight section through the right-left, and then all the way down to Brooklands, a left-hand combination that will lead you into Luffield, back into Woodcote, and onto the front straightaway again. It is an extraordinarily fast circuit. It's relatively flat. There is some elevation here, Ryan, but for the most part, this is a flat circuit. It's wide, and it's very, very fast. So we're going to see a lot of really good racing, I think, today.
Well, that flat nature harkens back to the heritage of this racetrack as an Air Force base. You don't have a lot of elevation change on a lot of runways, that's for sure, and this is a particularly flat part of the country selected for the Air Force Base for that reason, and that's transitioned nicely into its second life as a motor racing circuit. And all of those names, Maggots and Beckett's and Copps, I mean, it's such an evocative bunch of names associated with Silverstone. And Brooklands is my favorite because it harkens back to one of the first, if not the first, purpose-built racing facilities in the world, the Brooklands Circuit. It was a massive facility used for automotive testing, predating even the Indianapolis Motor Speedway. In a lot of ways, the Indianapolis Motor Speedway took Brooklands as its inspiration, and it's honored with the name of the corner here at Silverstone, a little piece of motor racing history in a circuit that is so rich in motor racing history.
It is a really neat racetrack. It's actually changed significantly over the last couple of years. It's, you know, they've repaved and unpaved and bulldozed and redone everything about 10 times over. There's actually a track map I saw, doing in my research for this race here this week. There's a track map that shows all those changes and reconfigurations. You might as well just pave this entire thing as a parking lot and drew out a bunch of squiggly lines. But the current layout that they've landed on, I think, is spectacular for racing. A lot of fast, high downforce corners that allows these cars to really lean on their aerodynamic components, which we're going to see simulated here in Assetto Corsa Competizione. If you'd like to learn more about how to join this series, there are 2 rounds remaining. Next round will be on March 11th at the Hungora Ring. You can learn how to join at CrowdStrikeRacing.com. Sam Parmet running 7th. That's him in that yellow and gray Porsche. At the top of the order, though, Sam Michaels in that 16. Again, this is the pro lineup, the drivers that are a little bit more serious, and it is looking serious at the top of that grid right now.
Yeah, that's an impressive lap, a 158.248, nearly 0.3 of a second clear of Josh Staffen in second. Interesting to see Michael's name popping up there, and then Staffen, who we're looking at right here, in the Acura / Honda NSX. We've had this conversation before, but for those new, if you're based in the States, you're wondering why is it a Honda logo on an NSX? Well, the Acura brand is specific to the North American market and the Chinese market. Pretty much everywhere else in the world, the NSX is badged a Honda, and so that's what we have here in Assetto Corsa Competizione. Nevertheless, it is still that same NSX GT3, staffing a very experienced sim racing driver. We've seen him in multiple competitions that we've been a part of on the broadcast side, Kyle, and you can kind of get a sense for the strength of the field. He tends to be right there in the top 5 or 6, and if you're running around where Josh is running, you know you've done something quite right.
You've done something right if you're running near him. I think some drivers might want to stay a little far away from him tonight, though. That is a striking livery, we'll say. And also, I'm not sure that he can see out the visor in that car. It's opaque and pink. And I asked earlier, I thought this was, a texture problem within the game. Nope, this is just Josh Staffen, with his personality making something, that is unique. We'll call it that, to say the least. But he is also very fast. He just ran his best lap, pulls him within 0.2 of a second of Sam Michaels, 0.183 off his best time of 1:58.431. This is a pretty long circuit. Again, 5.8 kilometers, 2 minutes around. Our races will be 25 minutes here tonight, so not that many laps, not that many reps around each of the corners here. So if there's one that's bugging you, you're not going to have to do it that many times, which is probably you're probably better off with a longer lap if you're bad at one particular section because you don't have to do it so many times.
Yeah, the only downside is you don't get much practice either, and it's one of those things where if you're having problems shooting a basketball from the left elbow, well, you just stand there and you shoot there until you get it figured out. At a racetrack and in a race car, this is true in the sim as well as in real life. You got to do a whole lap before you get a chance to do it at that particular corner that might be giving you trouble again. And at a track of this length, like you talked about, those opportunities are few and far between. But to your point, good news is, with a race of this length and a track of this length, you don't have to do it too many times, so hopefully that would give a bit of a reprieve for anybody who's struggling. But I don't think Staffen is struggling right now. That car looks pretty darn smooth, and he seems to be inch perfect, just never quite overstepping the bounds, using all the curb, using all the racetrack, and looking very fast in doing so.
That was one of the things I asked a couple of the drivers about during practice. Are track limits here? There's a lot of pavement around here, and not all of it is between the white lines. In the race, you'll be able to step a little bit farther outside those white lines and use some of that curbing that you see there, some of the runoff area, some of the AstroTurf, but it's not necessarily the fastest way around here, so you'll probably see drivers, at least in the pro category here tonight, trying to stay between those white lines and maybe just extending the track in a few key corners. So qualifying is complete, just having drivers finish out their laps. Sam Michaels, your provisional pole sitter right now in that number 16 CrowdStrike AWS Mercedes-AMG GT3. 17 drivers lined up for the grid. If you'd like to chat about this on social media, use hashtag CrowdStrikeCup to talk about this race. And again, CrowdStrikeRacing.com. More information not only on the virtual series, but also on the efforts in the real world beginning the first weekend in March at Sonoma Raceway in Sonoma, California. So, with qualifying concluding here, Ryan, we've got a 25-minute race with 17 cars at a pretty long, big, wide racetrack. That might invite a little bit of overconfidence, perhaps, into that first corner.
Well, there is that, and we talked about that some at the Nürburgring, a little bit at Barcelona as well, but that definitely always is a fraught moment of any race, right, when you're coming to the green flag, and it's your best chance to make up spots because everybody's all bunched together going about the same speed, and so trying to strike that balance between aggression to try and take advantage of the situation, but also having some foresight to not put yourself in a compromised position. You don't want to have your race ruined just 50 feet into the race or thereabouts. That's really going to be the difficult task, and as always, qualifying up front puts less of an incentive on taking risk, and so oftentimes that's really, well, most every time, that's where you want to be. If you can be, you're out of harm's way if you can qualify up towards the front.
Well, you spoke earlier about the diversity amongst the manufacturers here in this GT World Challenge inspired game here with the Assetto Corsa Competizione. We've got Ferraris, Acuras, Mercedes, Porsches, McLarens, Lamborghinis, pretty much everything. We got a Lexus and a Bentley in the field towards the rear, but GT3 cars specifically, we're using that term a lot. Ryan, explain what a GT3 car is and how they differ from some other cars in high-level motorsport.
Well, the first thing to take note of are the two letters GT, and it's basically short for Grand Touring. What that means in its specifics really isn't that important, but the important thing to take away is that these are going to look like a road car, a street car, something that theoretically at least you could go down the street and buy. Maybe that's more aspirational for something like the McLaren or the Lamborghini, but they are out there, and it is something that you can go and get. And in fact, all GT3 cars begin their lives as production cars. These are cars taken off the assembly line, earmarked, and then modified to go racing, but not as modified as some race cars that you see, and this is done primarily to keep costs in line. One other thing to keep in mind is that the GT3 part, that basically just refers to a set of regulations that manufacturers all around the world can subscribe to. GT3 is a bit more open in allowing different types of cars than other sets of regulations that you might see. And what that gives us is cars with very different configurations. Just look at the front row here with the Mercedes. Front engine, rear wheel, well, actually all are rear wheel drive in GT3, but front engine is the big thing here, and naturally aspirated V8 engine. Compare that to a turbocharged mid-engined Honda or Acura NSX, Porsche, of course, the rear engine model. All of these different ways to create a car, but the GT3 rules do a very good job of trying to balance those different variations of car design to create a platform where if you're a manufacturer of mid-engine cars, front-engine cars, rear-engine cars, turbocharged or naturally aspirated, you can bring them all to the party and know that you're going to be fighting on a relatively even playing field. And then the series in question can take some more actions to try and keep the field even closer together. But GT3, that's what we're talking about, that set of rules that allows these different manufacturers to come and play with the kind of car that theoretically, at least if your checkbook is bigger than mine, you can go and pick up yourself and drive on the street or on the racetrack.
And in this race here tonight for the CrowdStrike Cup Virtual Racing League, 5 different manufacturers in the top 5 to start this race, this first 25-minute race here, Ryan. So it is definitely outstanding. Speaking again on the real-life season, again, our next race in the CrowdStrike Cup Virtual Racing League will be March 11th. But before that virtual race, which will be our 4th round of this series, we'll actually race these cars in real life in Sonoma Raceway in Sonoma, California. It'll be, again, at crowdstrikeracing.com/Sonoma. The race will be live streamed there for everybody to see. So make sure that you tune in and root on CrowdStrike Racing and all the various forms of motorsport that they'll be competing in, not only in GT3, but also in the touring car categories as well. So looking forward to that. And we've got, I think, over 100 cars or thereabouts joining for Sonoma for the inaugural, or the first race of the season, I should say. So it's going to be busy down there, and it's going to be a lot of fun to watch.
Man, I can't wait to get out to Sonoma. It's a beautiful track, a great place to kick off the SRO America season. And you're right around 100 cars across the various SRO America series, the headliners being the GT3 cars of the Fanatec GT World Challenge America, powered by AWS. I've been practicing that to make sure I get it right when we get out to Sonoma here in a couple of weeks. But there are several other series, including the brand new GT America series, which has GT2, GT3, and GT4 spec cars all racing together. There's Pirelli GT4 America, which is exclusively GT4 cars in a 2-driver format, and then the touring cars, TC America, powered by Skip Barber as well. And can't wait to see those cars with the new TCX class, plus the returning TC and TCA classes, all mixed together. And it's just a ton of fun. So there's something for everybody. If you're like your European sports cars or your Japanese sports cars or your import tuners, whatever it might be, there's something for you in the SRO America paddock, and it all gets started in the first weekend in March.
Absolutely. And also, we mentioned earlier that George Kurtz actually got a chance to run in the 24 Hours of Daytona at the end of January, and there's a couple more rounds on his plate in the endurance racing over on the IMSA side as well. So that's exciting for George over there.
And hopefully we can also see him make a return to the Crown Jewel GT3 race on the calendar, the 24 Hours of Spa. He was able to head over there last year running alongside Colin Brown, his normal co-driver, and had some other help as well, and made his debut there. And there's some really cool incentives within the SRO America paddock this year to give teams that aspire to go and race that Crown Jewel event a chance to do so if they can clinch a championship this year. It's a really cool incentive that SRO America is dangling out there to its teams to go and you go out and you can, if you take care of your business this year, win a championship, you can go race in one of the biggest GT races, if not the biggest GT race in the world. And George Kurtz was kind of ahead of the game there with the CrowdStrike Racing team, heading over to Belgium and did a nice job representing the US series. But like you said, also involved in some prototype racing at IMSA, did a good job at the Rolex 24 at Daytona, and we'll see him for 3 more races over in that paddock at various times this year as part of their Endurance Cup.
Exciting things in the real world, but continuing our CrowdStrike Cup Virtual Racing League Series, round number 3 of 5 here from Silverstone Circuit. Again, my name is Kyle Heyer, joined by Ryan Marine. We are warming up here, getting the tires and brakes up to temperature before we turn the 17-car grid loose for 25 minutes of racing. Up in front, it's Sam Michaels in the CrowdStrike AWS Mercedes-AMG GT3, Josh Staffen on the outside in that green and yellow Acura NSX GT3. Really excited to get this underway. Again, we're running the track it's a little bit backwards from Silverstone if you're familiar with the Formula One layout. Again, we'll be taking the green on the opposite, or the old pit straight. This track has been reconfigured a couple times, as I had mentioned before. But the first corner is going to be a very basically flat out from the speed that we're going to be taking the green from into a very fast section known as Maggots and Beckett's. And that's going to be a lot of swinging the car right to left, Ryan, and carrying speed, which on slightly cold tires could be a little sketchy. So we'll see how these drivers handle it.
That's right, and if you're wondering, yes, indeed, here in Assetto Corsa Competizione, the official sim of SRO Racing, the cold tires and that sensation is modeled, and it's modeled very specifically. One thing even to keep an eye on is some curbs are particularly abrasive or can have some sharp edges to them, which when the tire is up to temperature and therefore up to pressure isn't going to do a whole lot of damage. But if you're on cold tires, low pressure, that can cause tire damage, and that's actually modeled in the sim as well. So such pains have been taken to try and recreate racing at the most realistic level, and everything down to the cold tires and what curbs you can use on your opening couple of laps to the way that the car handles in traffic and things like that. Everything that can be done to turn this into as realistic of an experience as possible. The folks at Kunos have done that, and it's one of the reasons that this has become such a popular sim racing platform here in the last handful of years.
Last couple corners here at Silverstone Circuit on our warm-up lap. And then we're going to turn everybody loose for 25 minutes in our pro race. Don't leave after this race concludes. We'll be heading straight into our AM race. A little bit more casual, fun night at the end of this. We'll talk with Diesel Lauder as well in just a little while, and we'll have him to chat with as soon as this race gets under green, as the field rolls out of turn number 18 here at Silverstone Circuit. 25 minutes on the board, 3:25 local time here in the sim, late afternoon. Sam Michaels in the CrowdStrike Racing AWS Mercedes-AMG GT3 on that inside of the front row. At the start-finish straight, they're going to get that green flag. It's down the road just a little bit. There it goes. Green flag flies, and we're racing in the CrowdStrike Cup Virtual Racing League, all ready to turn number 1. Through Cops, flying through. Staffen looks drivers left as they head down to Maggots and Beckett's.
Yeah, Staffen's on the attack already. Took a peek to the outside, now falls back in line. This is that Maggots and Beckett's section. First to the right, then to the left, and then you basically repeat that one more time. Really clean start here. I have to commend everybody for getting in line and making their way through this tricky section of track on cold tires without any major incident.
On board now with Bill Clark. There is Robbie Montanolo. Actually, that's going to be, let's see who that's going to be in front of him. That's a Porsche. As the field cycles through here, timing and scoring gets updated. That is the number 60 car of Lucio Franco. On the outside, right in front, is Chris Locke in that pink and green Mercedes. And already about halfway through this lap. There's Chris Walsh in the number 11 McLaren. Lots of attacking, hard braking opportunities here. McLaren goes down the inside. Walsh unable to complete that pass.
Tough place to get that pass done right there. And Clark was strong in the brakes, kept that door open, didn't pinch that off, and that's very courteous driving there. But very clean here to get this thing started, and great battles all the way from the front of the pack towards the back as well.
Bit of a slip and a slide up in front. You see Chris Locke in that number 6 Mercedes on the attack on Robbie Montanola in that 51 Ferrari. And that was Zach Coonan in the 300 Lamborghini. They got a bit sideways there for a moment. All sorts of action. Oh, the tricky part about Silverstone, Ryan, is that there's a lot of high-speed sections where you're trying to carry speed and downforce. Whoop, car spun. That's the 51 car. And that's what we feared, perhaps. Robbie Montanola losing control. There's looks like Bill Clark in the 92. But as I was saying, lots of fast corners and also a lot of slow corners. So you can't set this car up to do one of those two things well. You got to kind of compromise on both.
Yeah, that's exactly right. And what these drivers have been practicing all week long in preparation for this race is dialing in the handling of the car. And one of the things that you're going to do to try and balance that out is things like adjusting the wing settings on the car. Now, more wing will, in general terms, give you more grip through the corners, but it comes at a cost, and that cost is top speed. More grip means more drag. Whoa, big slide there from Michaels. That's from the lead.
From the lead down to 4th, maybe 5th. Just lost control of the car. The rear tire temp maybe not there. Now for the top spot, Staffen and Parmet drag racing down towards Stowe. Parmet on the inside of the number 98 Porsche. He's going to give up and tuck back in line. Now poke back out before they get to the corner into the braking zone. From the lead, that's a rare mistake out of Sam Michaels.
Yeah, you don't see that too often. He's been a stout competitor here in the previous couple of rounds, and what this does is it creates a battle royale up at the front. A nice recovery as well for Michaels, so we're going to have to keep an eye on him. I suspect he'll be on the charge. And these top 3 look pretty evenly matched. They were nose to tail just a moment ago, but Staffen a little bit smoother through that last sequence of corners. Going back to what we were talking about, though, with the compromise, the downforce settings, it looked like Michaels might have been a bit trimmed out, which is to say carrying less downforce. That's going to make that rear of the car more prone to sliding around like we saw. It's going to make him faster in a straight line, though. And I think what he must believe that he's going to be able to control that slide more often than not, and the benefit of the straight line speed that you gain from trimming out is going to be worth it. But we're going to have to see. Still 21 minutes left in this, and if that car is not handling to his liking, that's a long way yet to go.
So still some shuffling happening here in the midfield. There's Chris Locke dodged a bullet there with all that chaos happening behind him. Sam Michaels attacking Ian Burleson in front as they exit onto the front straightaway again. Actually, I think this is the opposite straightaway. This is the GP front straight.
That's right. So that pit lane you see to the right, if you watch the Formula One Grand Prix, that's where the F1 cars peel off and pit. But yeah, I think we're doing this on the opposite side, on the old Grand Prix pit lane here, and that's I think often where the GT cars are paddocked for various reasons.
Well, we do have a special guest here tonight. And, of course, that is, I don't know if I have permission to drag him in here, so I'll have to have him jump in here himself. But it'll be Diesel Lauder, the retired Master Warrant Officer of the Canadian Armed Forces, part of Operation Motorsport. So in just a moment, we'll have him in here. So as the racing continues up front, it's Staffen Parmet and Roman Alexinkov in the number 612 car. That is an attack in the Ferrari on the brakes into Stowe.
Yeah, that's aggressive there on the brakes. You see the Porsche run wide earlier, and we talked some about track limits. Effectively, what that means, if you're new to motorsports, there are parts of the track that are paved, but really aren't paved with the intention of the racing drivers using that paved part of the track. It's more there for safety reasons, and sometimes we do see drivers abusing that and using it the part of the track that's really not designed to be used in that manner to gain an advantage. And as Kyle pointed out earlier, a lot of the paved areas here at Silverstone won't necessarily give you an advantage from running wide and using them, so we might not see a whole lot of penalties in the way of track limit violations. But there are some parts where you open that wheel up a little bit more, you get a wider angle through the corner, and you can carry a bit more speed. And definitely Sam Parnet has been pushing the envelope to this point a couple of times. So far, we haven't seen anything pop up from Race Control, but you better believe they've got their eyes on that.
And in the booth now, we've got Diesel Lauder, the retired Master Warrant Officer of the Canadian Armed Forces and co-founder and CEO of Operation Motorsport, a veteran-led not-for-profit. Diesel, I really hope I didn't butcher your name there, but welcome to the CrowdStrike Cup Virtual Racing League.
Actually, no, you didn't. Good job on you.
Cool. Well, that's great to hear. I was a little worried about that one. So welcome. We're kind of mid-race right now. We've got a couple minutes in, a battle for the lead happening in the background. However, wanted to chat with you a little bit as we've got, I think that's the 27. Ooh, that's getting really dicey there. The 98 of Sam Parmet getting attacked by, I think that's Alexinkov in the 612. But Diesel, for those that don't know, what is Operation Motorsport, and tell us how it got its start.
Well, Operation Motorsport is the brainchild of, and I can't claim that we own the rights to this idea, but our sister organization in the UK called Mission Motorsport, it's been around for about 7 years, and about 2016, a friend of mine said we should go over to the UK and see this thing called the Race of Remembrance, and we ventured off to the UK, and what we found was this amazing event, a 12-hour race that centered around Remembrance Day, or Veterans Day, and brought together these ill, injured, and wounded service members in the UK. And after that, I left and was so moved that made the decision that we needed to go back and bring similar ill and injured, wounded service members, disabled veterans over there to get part of that experience. And that was the beginning of what is now, we are now just about at 4 years of Operation Motorsport.
So I guess I'll move on now with some of these questions. We did just see a battle for second place that ended up with one of those cars turned around, unfortunately. That was Roman Alexinkov that got spun out after some contact with second place Sam Parmet. Now Chris Walsh under attack from a Ferrari behind. That's the 333 of Dean Benaviste going on for position right now. So what sort of roles can the beneficiaries expect at races, whether in person or virtual?
Well, first of all, there's three programs. The Excite program is kind of the what we call the shiny bits, and it's how we get these individuals, that some of them suffering from PTSD or traumatic brain injuries, to actually come out from sometimes dark basements and places like that, and we get them come out because that's what soldiers like. They like things that make lots of noise and go fast. So when they come out to the events in the Excite program, we try to embed them in a race team, and sometimes they just clean the windshield, and sometimes they end up moving on to doing things like tires and fuel. But it's not just about turning wrenches. It's also about all the other bits and pieces that soldiers, sailors, and airmen take from their military career, whether it's hospitality, whether it's marketing, PR, logistics, and in some cases they even want to be drivers.
That's a really neat initiative, of course. Do you have any stories about times that you felt Operation Motorsport had really helped the service member out because of their relationship with racing? I'm sure there's lots of personal stories, but is there maybe one that really impacted you?
I think the most impactful story that we've ever had is a young man, Canadian, that came to us very early in his career, being medically retired due to mental health and other issues related to that. And the individual was in the Air Force and really suffering, but he was a brain. He was an aerospace engineer of all things, and we got him hooked up with some Porsche teams, etc. And through the years, he's stuck with us, and he's been to Wales with us twice. And it turns out now that he's just finishing up a master's program in aerospace engineering, and he's going to move on to one of our driver development programs. So a real success story, someone who's taken their life and moved forward.
That's incredible. Tell us about the Operation Motorsport Academy and also about the Race of Remembrance.
Well, Operation Academy is a good, it's a secret right now, but we'll share the secret. In spring, this spring, we're going to launch academy, and it's the learning side. It's the bit where we can prepare our beneficiaries coming out for what they're going to experience, because servicemen and women hate nothing more than being in a place where they're uncomfortable, where they feel like they're not prepared. So what we're going to do is we're going to take Operation Motorsport 101, and we're going to give them a one-day class on things like all the terminology and all of the roles and responsibilities that we all take for granted in motorsports, and prepare them to come out. Same with e-motorsport, so our iRacing program, of course, same thing. Prepare them to go virtually racing and give them a class with lessons where they can learn, and so when they come out to partake, they don't feel like, they don't want to ask that dumb question. So we'll prepare them better. And the most exciting part is we're actually going to be launching a driver development program with 2 candidates this year.
That's super, super exciting. You mentioned iRacing there. Of course, we're running an Assetto Corsa Competizione tonight, but iRacing, I understand that Operation Motorsport has an iRacing series, and I come from the iRacing world as well. So where can people can people watch that, or maybe become involved with the iRacing series around Operation Motorsport?
Well, currently we're running our second full season, so we have a winter league, and we have room if somebody wants to join our winter league. We've had 3 races, and we've had, I think, 26 drivers per event, so really good turnout. We're running GT4 machinery currently, which is relevant, and they can come out and watch. So on our YouTube channel, channel Operation Motorsport, on Tuesday evenings at 8 p.m. You can also find all the details of the league should individuals want to join, apply as either beneficiaries. We have pro drivers that come out and run with us. We have open, which is active service members. So it's quite a mixed bag. So Operation Motorsport, under our programs, there is an e-motorsport tab, and they can find out all that information there.
That's really awesome. So what's next for Operation Motorsport, and how can people get involved?
Well, next is and this is the key word here, we're gonna pivot back into in-person, and really exciting this year. All the things we couldn't do in 2020, we're looking forward to doing them in 21. And we've got quite a strong relationship with CrowdStrike Racing, DXDT, Bohm Racing. We are looking at embedding up to 5 beneficiaries within the CrowdStrike Racing team itself, so DXDT, etc. And that is the summer plan. So most of those individuals will be embedded for the entire year. And of course, the big end of the year for us is all of the folks that join teams and are there for the full season will be potentially asked to go to Wales with us and compete in the Race of Remembrance in November.
Well, that's really exciting. Diesel, thanks so much for your time and helping explain some of this stuff to those that might not know. And again, appreciate everything that you've done in Operation Motorsport. A truly awesome integration, and best of luck to you this year.
Thanks, Kyle. Good luck to you guys as well.
Thank you. So Ryan, that was awesome to talk with Diesel there for a little bit. We had some action going on in the background, a couple position swaps, some drivers with contact. Our second place, or actually make that third place driver, Roman Alexinkov, is now retired from this race, down in 16th spot with some crash damage. Watching a battle here now for 7th with Jeff and Matt in the 8 car out front in the Bentley.
Yeah, really good stuff that's been going on. A great conversation there with Diesel. He's been one of the first people I kind of got to know when I started working in the motorsports paddock, and a lovely, lovely guy with a great cause that Operation Motorsport supports. And the Race of Remembrance, it's not something I've been to, but everything I read about it, it just sounds absolutely incredible. But it was kind of hard to pay attention to the racing while you guys were chatting because it was a captivating conversation. But that said, we have had some good racing going on, and fortunately some contact like you talked about. This is a really good fight, though, right here. Less than a second between these 2 cars over the last handful of laps. It hasn't changed, and this is what GT3 racing is all about. We talk about different cars. Well, can they get much more different than this giant Bentley and the McLaren that's in hot pursuit? The brick-like Bentley and the lithe McLaren, really not a whole lot to compare the two, but running very similar lap times. This is going to be interesting, though. The McLaren able to get around the outside, but a little bit of contact spins him around.
A little too much power, I think, got the rear tires spinning in that McLaren and sent Jeff Corral around. Matt Gefeller is going to drive away. Robbie Montanola squeezes in between him into 8th spot now on the attack. After his spin, a handful of laps to go, we saw him spin out early in the event as well. So Robbie Montanola, again, from SRO America, joining us here tonight again as a competitor, and has some racing experience himself at Skip Barber Racing School and beyond a little bit too, Ryan. He's actually got some racing pedigree, although not a whole lot as of late other than the sim racing stuff, but he's here joining us and probably having a very good time.
It sure looks that way, and to your point, he did, I would say, about a half a dozen races in what is now the Indy Pro 2000 series. At the time, it was called Star Mazda. Raced against a certain former Indy 500 pole sitter, James Hinchcliffe, back in the day. And actually, if you go back and look at some of the names that were in the series that year, there are quite a few that a motorsports fan might recognize. But Robbie doing a nice job back behind the wheel. He was late to the driver's meeting here. Robbie, you can't do that. I know you're busy giving us idiots your instructions, but the driver's meeting is pretty important. So I'm going to say that maybe if he was on time to that driver's meeting, he might not have had that spin. What do you think?
Maybe. I'm sure that drivers being late to meetings is usually something that Robbie's probably yelling at drivers for, and he's probably going to yell at himself now, I think. But
I'll tell you what, it is not an uncommon thing at all, and you talk to PR reps, especially those at bigger teams, and they tell you it's like herding squirrels when you're trying to get the drivers where they're supposed to be on a race weekend.
Yeah, I've seen Robbie during race weekends doing some of that squirrel herding, and often it's entertaining just to spectate. But I'm sure it'd be fun to have him put a fire suit on and be on the other side of the fence again. It'd be an interesting dichotomy, I think. And meanwhile, he's chasing down this 8 car in that big old Bentley. It's got the aerodynamics of a refrigerator, but the motor of an aircraft carrier, and it's pretty quick.
It is, and actually this second generation Bentley, it is surprising for a car of its stature, but it really turned into, and I use it in the past tense because unfortunately in the real world at least, Bentley has effectively moved on from supporting customer GT racing, but it turned into a really good car and surprisingly good where the downforce comes into play and some of the high-speed corners. It really turned into something special, and I think that was epitomized with the win at the Liquid Moly Bathurst 12-hour last year, part of the SRO's Intercontinental GT Challenge. Unfortunately, Matt there running a little bit wide. That opened the door for Robbie to pounce, and Robbie was right on it. But again, you're comparing a Ferrari to a Bentley, and yes, both are luxury cars and aspirational brands in many respects, but you don't expect the performance to be that equal. However, in GT3 racing and SRO racing, that's exactly what we have.
So great racing going on back here for 7th, although that position has now swapped. We're going to move our attention back forward up to Sam Parmet and Ian Burleson in that McLaren 720 chasing down the Porsche 911. Again, we've talked about this Porsche rear-engined, unlike its GT Endurance counterpart that has moved that engine forward. Totally different as we see the leader, Josh Staffen, he's out off the racetrack. What the heck happened here?
I don't know, but that is the second time our leader has hit strife, and we're going to try and take a look at the replay. This should give us a good idea. Look at the lead that Staffen had, and it's all gone.
Just got in really hot into turn 1, already sideways entering, just didn't have the rear grip and balance that he needed. Looped the car around, got himself off in the gravel trap there, Ryan, and lost the lead. He's down to 4th place now. Sam Parmet is now the race leader, and it's only a handful of tenths of a second back to find Burleson. So our race for the lead just got a whole lot more interesting in the final few minutes of this race.
I'll tell you what, Josh has got to be kicking himself. That is a big surprise. A driver with as much sim racing pedigree as he has, to see him have that kind of mistake with a lead that big. I mean, there was no reason to push. I think the lead was up over 4 seconds prior to that incident, and that's the thing. That's how quickly things can go awry. One thing that separates motorsports from a stick and ball sport, say in the Super Bowl a couple of weeks ago or last week, whatever it was, the Buccaneers got up to a pretty big lead, like, a 20-point lead. Well, you can't lose that in one fell swoop, but in racing you can. You put one wheel wrong And it doesn't matter how far up ahead of the road on the road you might be, you can throw the whole thing away. So that is a big surprise to see Staffen make that kind of a mistake, and I suspect he's driving through the red mist right now, trying to make up for that error.
Well, and he sees big old CrowdStrike logo on the rear bumper of the Sam Michaels car just up the road. It's about a second between them. Look at how much he closes here into this final complex. He just is so aggressive on the brakes, but I just wonder if this car is trimmed out, as you said earlier, if that rear balance isn't there, and if pushing harder is just going to make this car even more out of control in the closing moments of this race.
Oh, here we are as well, 22 minutes just about into this 25-minute race, and the tire wear is going to change. The weight distribution changes as well as you burn off fuel. So, you know, the fact is this car could have been handling a lot better at the start than it is now. That's definitely part of it, and maybe you're right. Maybe it was an aggressive aero setting that he chose, and that made it a bit more difficult. But nevertheless, when you've got a lead like that, I would say you can dial back the aggression a little bit and probably insulate yourself a little bit from a mistake like the one we saw. And the beneficiary of this has been Parmet here in the Rover Racing liveried Porsche. And it was a Porsche just like this exact livery that won the Total 24 Hours of Spa this year in dramatic fashion. And not a surprise to see the venerable 911 running at the front of a GT race once again.
Well, I'm not sure if Sam Parmet is a little superstitious, but he might be a little stitious and might have grabbed that paint scheme as a potential advantage, perhaps, maybe at least in the heart. Pulling up a little bit of the grass and dirt through some of the S's here. Ian Burleson closing in, putting some pressure on that race leader in the final 2.5 minutes. I'd expect next lap to be the final one here at Silverstone Circuit for our pro race, and then we'll reset with our AM race to round out the evening with a bit of more casual vibe out there on the racetrack. But I don't think there's a whole lot of casual about to happen up at the front right now.
No, to your point, Burleson looks like he is really closing in, and there are several places around this track you can get in the slipstream and really make a challenge. This is one of the tighter chicanes on the track. Both of these cars look fairly evenly matched, but that Porsche a little bit twitchy coming off that corner there, Kyle.
Yeah, it's interesting to me because the Porsche typically is actually quite grippy exiting corners. It's got that kind of squat because of all the weight over the rear, and when that weight shifts rearward when you apply throttle, it tends to just get up and go. So if it's a little twitchy on throttle, that's maybe worrying for how Sam Parmet has this car set up. How aggressive is it set up, and how much is he pushing? Could he have worn off those rear tires? That is a concern, perhaps. Ian Burleson is just going to see that, and that's a weakness shown for me, Ryan. I think that's telling Ian that Sam is struggling right now.
Yeah, that's blood in the water to a shark. When you see the car in front of you twitching like that, you know that there's an opportunity to pounce. To your point, though, about the Porsche, that rear engine configuration in the GT3 car, unlike the GTE variant, which has swapped the gearbox with the engine in terms of the layout of that car, but the GT3 car is the traditional 911 rear engine layout, and it's very good traditionally in the wet, and it's very good at putting power down because of the weight over the drive wheels. Where you have to adjust as a driver if you're coming to the Porsche from other cars is high-speed corners. If you lift off the throttle, that weight transfers forward really quick. Looks like he ran wide a little bit, and that opens the door ever so slightly for the McLaren, but he slams it back shut. And Burleson wisely backs out of it. He'll double back now and try and regroup. Good defensive move from Parmet.
He might have shown his only hand right there, Ryan. He was so close, but wasn't able to complete that pass or even get alongside. That's a concern for me, just because I think that was perhaps his best opportunity to maybe just get close and follow him through that section. But he's still within about 5 car lengths here as they head through Copse onto the backside of the racetrack, or Stowe rather. And Burleson is close enough where he could make a dive in the last sector of this racetrack. This time by will be checkered flag for Sam Parmet. Half a lap to go here, and that Burleson machine is right there.
Yeah, he's got to get it done, and you're right, that could have been his best chance, but you just don't know, and it wasn't far enough along to really commit to it. That was inviting disaster. Parmet, though, has to know that this McLaren is a bit stronger, and you have to avoid the temptation of driving in your mirrors. That was a late lunge.
And they're both going to spin. Where's Sam Michaels? He's going to drive by both of them and bring Staffen into the mix. Wow, the leaders take each other out. Now Michaels in the 16 CrowdStrike car takes the lead.
Unbelievable. The two cars that spun out of the lead earlier in this race at various times, Michaels and Staffen, they're back to 1-2. Looks like Parmet and Burleson have been able to resume. Parmet still in third. Burleson, though, slipping down the order a little bit. And the battle is on for the lead. Michaels and Staffen all of a sudden at the point.
Staffen one final lunge, but the checkered flag will come out on this straightaway. Sam Michaels in the last half of a lap is gifted the race win as the two in front tangle. Sam Michaels wins the CrowdStrike Cup Virtual Racing League round number 3 from Silverstone Circuit. What a pass, splitting the difference between the two spinning cars, and Staffen coming up about a half a second short.
Well, that move there from the McLaren, that was just a little bit of desperation there, trying to get past Parmet. And as disappointed as Sam must be, you have to say that the two best cars were probably Staffen and Michaels. Maybe not, maybe in that order. I think Staffen, with the lead that he built, looked awfully strong, as Bill Clark has some issues here towards the end of his race in the Pink Pig. But man, that was a dramatic final lap, and I'm not sure Michaels even could have dreamed that it would have broke his way the way that it did. Merry Christmas comes awfully early for Michaels here tonight.
Or really late, one of the two, but
yeah, that's true.
Michaels in the 16 car is your winner here for the CrowdStrike Cup Virtual Racing League Pro Race. We've got our AM race coming up here in just a minute. There are your results here, Ryan. A lot of shuffling through the middle part of this race, but at the end, that last lap was where all the action was for me, with those front two getting together into the one of the tightest and trickiest points on the circuit. There's a couple of crossovers there. I think either way, even if that move didn't happen down there, it was going to get messy somewhere else in the lap, but it happened a little sooner than I thought.
Well, I was in the middle of praising the McLaren driver. I'm blanking on the name. I'm sorry. Was that
Burleson, Ian Burleson.
It was Burleson, that's right, yes, who ends up back there in 12th for his discretion at the beginning of the lap, but ultimately a little bit too aggressive there and catches Parmet out. Parmet still able to recover to get a podium there in third. It's going to call Robbie Montanola, though, not just because he's our boss, but also because he had that spin on the first lap. He was, if not dead last, awfully close. He recovers to get a very strong 6th, and I have to say, if you're going to have your race go awry early on, to be able to maintain that focus and get a recovery drive to 6th like that is pretty impressive stuff. But the same can be said for Michaels, who had that lead early, spun out of the lead basically on his own, but kept his head down, kept him out of trouble, kept the nose clean, and ended up with another race win.
Spectacular finish there. Our AM race is already pacing for their 25-minute event, so we're going to transition on over to that in the meantime. But we were gifted a very special ending to that. I'm not sure all the drivers would agree that was spectacular, but I thought it was fun to watch for sure. Now we're going to re-rack them, restack them, go again. Different drivers this time, Ryan, a bit more casual, those that don't have quite as much racing experience. But I think this will be just as fun to watch with people that are just here for fun here at Silverstone tonight in the CrowdStrike Cup Virtual Racing League.
Well, if previous editions of this have been any indication, then you're exactly right. There might not quite be as much experience in this field and maybe less time spent in preparation, but the results have been really spectacular, and another great mix of machinery in this lineup. I love seeing the Aston Martin represented there up on the front row with Adam Youngblood there that we're taking a look at. We've got another NSX, we've got a McLaren, Lamborghini, Mercedes, even the Nissan represented here as well, Godzilla, as that Nissan is affectionately known as. Love to see that car in the field there towards the back of the shot.
Well, already concluding the pace lap here. Again, another 25-minute round. Adam Youngblood up on pole in that number 1 car. Again, that is the Aston Martin, a car that we did not see in the previous race. They're going to come out of the final corner, and we've got 16. I think we'll have maybe 9 drivers for this one. I think there are 16 in the server, but not all on the racetrack at the moment. Coming through the last couple of corners, and I can never get my bearings on this racetrack. I can never tell what straightaway we're on. I think this is the green flag straight. We'll find out here in a moment.
Too.
There it is, green flag. We're racing at Silverstone in the CrowdStrike Cup Virtual Racing League AM race. Youngblood fires off into turn number 1 through Copse, and the rest of the field single filing out on the run down to Maggots and Beckett's.
Yeah, here is that Maggots and Beckett sequence, and again, Kyle mentioned this earlier, but if you're just joining us, if this looks familiar, Well, the Circuit of the Americas S's section is modeled off of this particular part of the Silverstone racetrack, and for good reason. It's one of the more famous sequences of corners, and in these GT3 cars, with as much downforce as they make, it is awfully fast. Speaking of fast, that was a fast off for Jason Leach, but he's able to wrangle it back under control, 4 wheels off in the grass, and somehow keeps it pointed in the right direction.
Yeah, he got a little bit of help there from a driver, I think it was Thomas Simpson, that gave him a little bit of a shunt off the racetrack, but they've both carried on and continued. That's that Lamborghini Huracan GT3 Evo. That's a nice, mighty fine-looking car, I must say. Very wedge-shaped and very aggressive-looking. There is Jason Leach going to pull right back in front of him in that number 23 car. Again, Jason from Operation Motorsport. We've talked with him as well in the past, but the two drivers out front drive it away. Meanwhile, these guys having a great scrap back here for 5th.
It's always funny when a couple drivers come together and they find themselves right back on track together once again. Taking a look back here from Leach. Here's a dive up the inside. That's going to get close, but both leave enough racing room. That's really well done through this switchback portion.
Looks like Simpson's going to get some purchase on corner exit with some traction. A long left-hander here. Leach is going to run a little wide. Watch the grass. There's some rumble strip there. There's some kind of concrete area, then it's grass, and you don't want to get on the grass like there is a driver in the background. I think that's Webo in the Nissan Nismo GTR here going off at the exit of that corner.
Yep, exactly right. Just went a little bit wide. I'm not exactly sure what caused that, but able to avoid hitting anything, and that's good news. Let's take a look at the replay. Was this all alone?
Had a driver behind, and kind of a shallow line here through the tight and twisties. And then accelerates here. There might have been a touch. That's the 519th of Gianpaolo Albanese. And, oh, yeah, there was a touch for sure coming together at the center of that corner.
I'll say this. The Lamborghini was up alongside. I think it caught Chen off guard a little bit, and he went trying to get back down to the apex. Just a little bit late on turn in there, and that opened the door for the Lamborghini to make that dive up the middle, and I don't think he thought he was there, and so some door-to-door contact, but effectively no harm, no foul on that one. Both drivers are able to continue on.
Adam Youngblood is driving away right now, ahead of Jackson by 2.8 seconds. Thomas Simpson into 3rd. He and Jason Leach have settled their differences, at least for now. There's Roman Alexinkov. We saw him in the pro race a little earlier. He was out early with crash damage. Jeff Walter trying to run him down for 5th.
Yeah, maybe the organizers allowed him to take part here in this second race after his race ended so early last time, but certainly great to have him in the field once again, and off to a pretty nice start here, driving that car up to 5th and trying to run down the top 4. It's pretty tight here, all things considered, about 10 seconds separating the top 5 at this stage, and we're going to have a battle on our hands here before too long as Alexinkov is really closed in on Leach.
Again, this has been that pinch point. This really is sort of turn 2 on the GP course down here. This tight kind of first, maybe second gear right-hander. Whoop, there's a car turned around. That's our second place car, Jackson Rusin, who spun at the exit of that corner. I'm going to bet, we'll go back and have a look here. I'm going to bet that it was maybe a little bit too much power. I'm going to see if we can go back. Didn't catch that quite in time, but a little too much power, I think, at the corner exit there. Ryan spun them up. Maybe adjust that traction control setting and help the cars out.
Yeah, that's right. So these cars do have some adjustable driver aids available to the drivers, just like their real-life counterparts do, traction control being part of it. And trying to get that TC dialed in just right is a big component of getting speed out of these GT3 cars. The TC, it can be a little bit on the finicky side. Like you really have to have it figured out to be able to maximize it. As we take a look at Alexinkov, we got some slower traffic for our top 5 to deal with. They're able to split that Mercedes, which seems to be in some kind of strife at the moment. Alexinkov has made his way up into 2nd, so he's actually cleared a couple of those cars, and that's Rusin there that collides with the lapped car and goes on yet another spin. That's
Kashan Patel in the number 4 car. That's the Mercedes. A little bit of trouble there through Maggots and Beckett's, but Rusin will get back rolling. Going back to 2nd, though, this is a really good fight. It'll just kind of slide backwards to 3rd here just a touch. It's Simpson and Leach going at it. They've been going at it since lap 1. Simpson's wide. Leach pulls up alongside of the run down to the hairpin. Getting scrappy here, elbows out.
Yeah, second verse, same as the first. These guys just cannot settle this battle. Simpson kind of got parked there at the apex, and seem to almost lock up the brakes. Hard to do with the ABS on these cars, but definitely had to slam on the binders there to avoid any contact. And just taking a look at this, Kyle, I'd like to get your thoughts. You are heavily involved in the sim racing world. Just watching the stance of this car and the way that it's behaving, its attitude, kind of looks like that the McLaren there, or sorry, the Lamborghini there might be being driven by a controller as opposed to a steering wheel. What do you think?
I'm thinking that's extraordinarily likely. I wouldn't be shocked if it was a keyboard, to be totally honest. It looks,
looking at that.
Well, I'm seeing 45 degree. It might be a controller, but either way, this is impressive regardless. Again, Assetto Corsa Competizione allows competitors to basically use any kind of input device, whether that's a steering wheel and pedal set, an Xbox or PlayStation controller, or you're just your keyboard or mouse. You can drive with just a keyboard and mouse. It's hard to be competitive, but if you are competitive on a keyboard and mouse or even a controller, I commend you, because I certainly do not have the talent for that. It requires this very special touch to be fast with that kind of controller setup.
Well, I suppose there could be some sim racing veterans who go back long enough where that was just the way you did things. And I certainly remember firing up the old Papyrus NASCAR racing or IndyCar racing games from back in the day, and that's all we had. Running those on DOS, going back quite a long time. Maybe I'm aging myself a little bit here, but definitely something my dad had when I was a kid, and that's just what you had. And I remember when we finally advanced to a joystick, and that felt like a huge upgrade. And then, oh my goodness, the steering wheel really was a game changer. And now you talk about the kind of force feedback that companies like Fanatec bring to the table with the direct drive feel, and having driven real race cars at a low level and now being pretty involved in sim racing as well. It is pretty amazing to me how realistic some of these modern force feedback wheels are. And then I think back on trying to drive some of these sims with the keyboard back in the day and thinking about people still doing it today. It's amazing that that's still a thing, and some people are still amazingly good at it.
It's even more amazing now because, back in the day, though, some of those original games were designed for input like that. Assetto Corsa Competizione will allow you to drive with a keyboard, but it doesn't do a whole lot in the way of smoothing out that input, because it's not really an expected way that you drive the simulator. Totally can. It's just really hard to do successfully without burning up the tires and scrubbing them around everywhere. But I'll give Thomas Simpson credit. Whatever he's controlling this with, he's doing a spectacular job doing it. So big props to him. He's going a little off track there, and I think he's got maybe a connection issue, because that car is stopped dead on the on the back straightaway there, and looks like he is going to drop out of this session. Unfortunately, it looks like it's gone up on an invisible jack.
Well, that's too bad, because he's been putting on a show for us, but the entertainment hasn't stopped, even if his connection has.
Oh man, I've seen some really silly things. I had a connection failure in this sim a little while ago, and the cars all just took off like we're sitting at Austin Airport or something. It just all started accelerating into the sky like reindeer, and it was magical for a moment. But anyway, we'll move back forward and check in on Adam Youngblood, our race leader. The leaders in the pro race had a lot of trouble, but in the AM race, it's been relatively clear up front. But Roman Alexinkov is reeling in that race leader right now, only 1.1 seconds back.
Yeah, and I think he had to start towards the back of this field, so he has really been on a charge. We kind of saw him make his way up into the top three, and there was some trouble up ahead that he benefited from, but he was able to make up a couple of spots as well on his own, and he has methodically tracked down Youngblood, who really was able to get off to such a great start to this race, and looked like he might be able to go to the checkered flag unchallenged, but all of a sudden we're seeing Alexinkov pull him in, and now within a car length. I mean, he is there. It's just a matter of trying to find the best way to make that move.
We have a long way to go, too. Only 10 minutes into this race, 15 minutes to go. Alexinkov late apex there, trying to keep the speed, accelerating in a straight line. And he's going to have the slipstream here on this straightaway, tuck in behind and let Youngblood push the air out of the way with that big ol' Aston. And here comes Alexinkov having a look to driver's left here into Brooklands.
Yeah, this is a place you can get it done, but pretty good defensive move there from Youngblood, but he goes just a little bit wide. He's going to have the inside here, but I think Alexinkov is going to make that outside line work. boy, that was close between those two, nearly coming together, but Alexinkov able to make it stick, going the long way around, move him to the top spot.
Got it done, and I think Youngblood just drove into Brooklyn's a little bit too hot, got on the brakes a bit too late. You see him cutting the track there just to try to get a little bit of an advantage. Can't do that too much more than that, or you'll find yourself with a penalty. But Youngblood just drove in a little hot, got on the brakes too late, and overdrove the corner. That let Alexinkov get to the outside and complete that pass. But well done regardless for the driver in the 612 Ferrari right now. Jason Leach still holds on to third. For 8th spot, there's a bit of a scrap going on here between Gianpaolo Albanese in the 519. That's a Lamborghini, and John Willeman in a Lexus, a car you don't see a whole lot in Assetto Corsa Competizione. But here they go for 8th.
Not just in ACC, but just in real life. There's not many of these Lexus RCF GT3s in existence, and there is actually a provision in GT3 rules, because this is supposed to be a customer class, that you're required to make 10 in the first year and 20 by the end of year 2. Willeman trying to make that stick to the inside, but kind of got shoved down into the grass, kind of went there of his own volition, and he was the big loser there. Albanese able to hang on, but punted up the rear. Great save, however, to keep it pointed in the right direction. But I have to believe that's going to get the attention of the stewards, as Jimmy Morgan just went into that corner with seemingly unabated speed and kind of forced the issue, safe to say, with the chrome horn.
Yeah, a little bit of a punt there for sure. These cars are strong enough that they could probably recover with that without too much damage, but I think the damage will have been done to the race for Gianpaolo Albanese. He'll get a chance to drive right back up to him and maybe return the favor, perhaps, but clearly the retaliation aspect not necessarily looked high up upon, but I don't think we'll see that necessarily. But, it'll frustrate him, I'm sure, and we'll see him try to climb back up there and grab that spot back. Meanwhile, for 4th, Jackson Rusin is wide, and he had an issue with a lap car earlier. He just lost another spot to Chris Locke. He drops down to 5th now.
Haven't talked a whole lot about Chris Locke in this race. It's been a nice, clean run to this point in that Mercedes, and doing a really good job keeping the nose clean. No visible damage on that race car, which is always great. And whoop, as I say that, running afoul of some lap traffic, but again, able to avoid it. And I'll tell you what, Chris has done a great job just avoiding trouble, even when trouble is trying to find him.
And this, of course, is the Evolution variant of the Mercedes-AMG GT3. It's got that wider mouth on it here, Ryan. If we can have a look at that, and I think Kashan is running the older version, and you can see the differences in the headlights and the grille. But again, the Evo variant's just a little bit better of everything, and it's kind of they're cool looking, I think, in my opinion. And I think we'll see some more of these, especially in the DXCT Racing, CrowdStrike Racing paddock this year in GT World Challenge America.
Yes, certainly so. They were running the Evo version last year when it became available. And basically what we're talking about here is, if you go back to our discussion about the GT3 regulations from earlier in the broadcast, the manufacturers can build these cars to those regulations, but once they have done that, they submit the design to the FIA and the SRO, which are two governing bodies that oversee GT3 racing, and then the design is what's called homologated. It just means it's all locked in and can't be changed. So the teams that run these cars effectively can't do anything to them outside of some small setup-related adjustments on a race weekend. There's no development per se that goes on. However, after a certain number of years, I believe it's 3, manufacturers are allowed to re-homologate the car in what is called an Evolution or Evo version of the car. And actually, Mercedes was pretty slow to do so. They basically ran the original Mercedes-AMG GT3 version unchanged for, I think, 4 or 5 years because it was so successful. They really didn't see the need to go to an Evo. Finally did introduce one here recently, and it took what was already considered one of the most driver-friendly cars in GT3 racing and took it one step further. Speaking to drivers that have driven both, and they say the gains are not major, but just little tiny things that make you more consistent over the course of a race. That's really where Mercedes was able to make a big step forward. And several other manufacturers have done that. Most notably, I would point to the NSX. Its first edition was very fast, especially in the hands of very talented pro drivers, but for amateur drivers, it proved to be kind of a tricky car to handle. They focused on making it a more stable platform and more driver-friendly with the Evo, and it's turned into a world beater. Just about anywhere in the world, the NSX has been very competitive. So it's kind of interesting to see how manufacturers have taken advantage of these rules that the SRO and the FIA have for GT3 regulations to try and improve the cars, even though on the surface, really superficially, there's not a whole lot that's different. Yes, you see a few little design tweaks here and there, a few aero changes here and there, but effectively it's the same car, even in the Evo package. A lot of it actually is just what's done inside the car with driver aids and ergonomics and things of that nature that help to improve them from one generation to the next.
And just as a racing fan, I think they always look really cool. The tweaking of the aero inlets and that sort of thing, and the aerodynamic surfaces always looks really neat. Widening the mouths on the front of the cars for more cooling and that sort of thing always looks really neat. Jumping back to 8th place, there's Gianpaolo Albanese right in front of Jeffrey Walter in the 666 red Mercedes AMG. This is one of the older variants. Real big understeer there. You can see the tires screaming for grip and running a little wide there, so didn't have the car slowed down quite enough. But Walter been running back here in 9th. No damage on the car. Just having a nice day back here without any dramas.
Yeah, well, the 666 car there looking a bit devilish in terms of its handling, to your point. And going on a bit of a ride through the grass there, too. You talk about the understeer. Effectively, what that means for the driver is you turn the wheel, you expect the car to turn with it, and it just doesn't. You can't get the front to bite. Oversteer is the opposite problem, where the back end of the car is lacking in grip and wants to swing around on you. In fact, one of the best ways I've heard the two explained is understeer is when you hit the wall with the front of the car, and oversteer is when you hit the wall with the back of the car. So hopefully that gives you an idea to visualize some of the different handling characteristics that the drivers are trying to deal with. And they do have small things they can tweak inside the cockpit in real time to try and deal with any handling issues that might pop up over the course of a race.
Well, all this is going on deeper in the bottom half of the top 10. Out in front, though, Roman Alexinkov in this Ferrari has just driven away. It's a fairly significant gap, 11.5 seconds now, and is continuing to run some of the best laps that he's run all day. A 1:59.781 is only 0.2 off his best. Adam Youngblood just ran a 2:02.496. That was his best lap, but it was 3 seconds slower than Roman's time last lap. So struggling now, although the two had fairly comparable pace at the drop of the green flag.
Yeah, Roman has been incredibly fast here in this race, and consistently so as well. Youngblood's had a really clean race too, and I mean, at the moment it doesn't seem like there's anybody quite in Aleksinkov's class, but Youngblood, I have to commend, got a great start, put up a good fight when Aleksinkov caught him. They raced side by side, it was clean, but just doesn't quite seem to have the same pace as that Ferrari, and maybe it's just a case of this circuit suits the Ferrari a little bit better than the Aston Martin. It doesn't seem like it should be the case. This is home turf for the Aston, of course, in the UK, but that's the way it goes sometimes.
To answer the question about Thomas earlier, who had, there's a car off behind. That was Jason Leach. Big dive into Brooklands there. Thomas Simpson had a disconnection issue earlier. It looked like his PC crashed, and we did get confirmation that he was using a PlayStation 5 controller. So well done. I will give him a lot of credit for that, because I know from experiencing this game with a controller, I just can't figure it out. So that was pretty impressive.
Yeah, no kidding. That is absolutely amazing. So not quite the keyboard we were talking about, but even still, to try and go up against some of the high-end Fanatec steering wheels and things of that nature with anything less is really taking a knife to a gunfight.
Really is. Jason Leach struggling with the front-end grip on this McLaren. I think one of the coolest looking cars out there, and it sounds really good as well. It's got that swoopy kind of Batmobile look to it. And I'm also hearing, Ryan, that with Roman Aleksinkov's admission to this race, he's not eligible to win this race. So currently the leader would be Adam Youngblood in the number 1 car, which moves our second place driver to Chris Locke, who just continues to lap very consistently and is going to end up with a podium alongside Jason Leach if things continue.
Yeah, exactly right. It's been a nice consistent run to this point, and Just trying to keep it clean here for the final few minutes of this race. Maybe if you get a little bit lucky, there's some problems up the road, and don't forget that lap traffic can always factor in as well.
It certainly can. 5 minutes to go. We're sort of joking in the background about air jacks in mid-race for Tom, but I was thinking back to Tom O'Gorman, who at Watkins Glen last year actually left the pits with a faulty air jack under the rear of the car and actually ripped it off, leaving pit lane. So I can confirm that having your air jacks out underneath the cars, and Ryan, maybe you could explain how that system works, but I know that Tom's ripped one off before, and it was probably not an inexpensive fix.
Well, how it was stuck out, I'm a little bit unclear as far as how Tom's work, but basically, unlike, say, a NASCAR pit stop where there is a pneumatic jack, or not a pneumatic jack rather, but just a normal jack that you would maybe use in your own garage to lift the cars up, and then they take that around to the other side, much like, say, in IndyCar racing, these GT3 cars are equipped with pneumatic jacks where you plug in a pressurized air hose that basically forces these jacks out from the bottom of the car and lifts them up. And so that's what we're talking about here. But when you withdraw that air hose, it should lower the car down. So exactly how Tom was able to leave the pits without the air hose in and the jack down is a bit of a mystery to me, but maybe you've got some insight.
Yeah, I think it just got stuck when the car dropped. I think it bent and wasn't able to retract all the way. As we see Jimmy Morgan go by Jackson Rusin for 5th, didn't retract all the way. Whoop! There goes. No, Jimmy Morgan slipping and sliding on corner X. It doesn't hit anything, gets back rolling, but will drop a spot to Jackson Rusin. Yeah, nice save. Didn't run into anything, which is hard to do as soon as you hit the grass, Ryan. As you know, it's like hitting. You might as well just be driving on ice at that point.
Now, certainly, if it's wet grass, some of the dry grass you can kind of deal with at various times, but it depends on how much searing he got in the cars. We see Williman go off track as well. It's been a difficult race for John. He was running up towards the front not so long ago and has dropped back significantly. Not quite sure what happened there.
Some dramas perhaps in the previous laps. He'd actually just run his best lap of the day, a 2:02.418. And so he was on a tear before, but just lost control. He'd actually just passed Jimmy Morgan's stricken McLaren at the exit of turn number 1 when he had those issues for himself. So a little bit slick on that side of the racetrack, perhaps. Also hearing that Chris Locke is also not going to be considered for an AM podium, so that will move Jackson Rusin, I believe, into the spot for 3rd place.
Now, Kyle, why would you assume that I've driven off into the grass?
I'm not assuming. I just
you insinuated that I would know something about this.
Well,
You're
do
not
you?
Wrong for what it's worth.
There you go. Well, I know that you've got some Spec Miata experience, and as do I. And I also very quickly found that racetracks can be very slick at times. In a 90 horsepower Miata, I spun out leaving pit road, so I've done embarrassing things too.
And you copped to them on a public broadcast.
I did.
Give you credit for that.
Yes. I admitted to my fault. And I got my silly goose sticker and I went about my day.
Best you can do.
Yes. Pass for position. That was Jimmy Morgan past Jackson Rusin for 5th spot. So Jimmy Morgan, with the 2 drivers that are not eligible for the AM class podium, is going to put himself on a podium here with 1.5 minutes to go. Next time by should be white flag here for our race leader. And we're going to go one more time around Silverstone, another 6 kilometers.
So Aleksenkov here is the leader on the road, but effectively just a guest driver in the field here. And I suspect this might have had something to do with the fact that the pro race that he was in earlier didn't quite go according to plan, and just wanted the opportunity to get back out and put all that practice that he had put in to prepare to use here. Take a look. There might have been an issue. Yep, there was. We saw the white flag, which when displayed at a corner station means a slow-moving car on track, and that appears to be Morgan here.
Yeah, let's go back and
not sure what caused this.
Have a look. It was in front of Rusin. This was would have been for 3rd place in AM. Wonder if he caught a lot of grass there on driver's right, jumped the curb there, Ryan, a little too aggressive, and it cost him. He got the barrier as well.
Yeah, that's exactly what happened, and some of those curbs can get quite steep once you get past the striped portions and onto the sausage curbs, as we call them. Or maybe you're a curb expert. Would those be sausage curbs there on the back?
Yeah, Yeah, that's what I call them. There's a lot of names that sleeping policemen are the ones that are perpendicular to the racetrack, but I would call those sausage curbs. The NASCAR guys call those things turtles. I would call the apex pyramids turtles, like the things you see at COTA. But there's lots of nicknames for curbing and the concrete berms that are alongside the racetrack to keep drivers from running off course or cutting the racetrack. You see another one here, another sausage curb, because they look like a big curled up sausage on the inside. But for Roman Alexinkov, who's going to come out of one of the final corners here. And this is actually going to be the half lap to go mark for this race leader in that 612 Ferrari. Again, not going to win this race. It'll actually be Adam Youngblood in the one. That is the first AM competitor in this field.
Well, it might not count officially, but I think Roman can tell all his friends that he won this race. He did finish first, assuming he can get around for the rest of this lap, and again, good to see him back out, given how the pro race went. It really didn't quite break his way tonight, but able to show his mettle here in the second race of the evening.
Absolutely. So our next race, as we wait for the race to complete here, March 11th, CrowdStrikeRacing.com is where you can learn and find out how to join and be a competitor here, as we have one final corner for Roman Alexinkov. We'll take the overall victory here in the AM race for CrowdStrike Cup Virtual Racing League round number 3. Rounds the final corner, turn 18 here at Silverstone, and crosses under the checkered flag here in just a moment. There it is against the pit wall. He's going to drive right up to it and collect it. Alexinkov, overall winner. Adam Youngblood, though, will be the AM category winner in this number 1, Aston Martin, and just kept the car clean, Ryan, off the fence all night long, and that's what's going to get him this victory.
Did have that close battle with Alexinkov, and I'm sure he's happy that he didn't put up more of a fight and really compromise his race when he finds out that Alexinkov wasn't even eligible to actually get the win. So congratulations to Adam. Really well-judged race. Certainly deserves it.
Chris Locke, third place overall, but in terms of the podium, it'll be Jason Leach and Jackson Rusin that will come on through and pick up the AM class podium. And Jason Leach, a really strong run, had some fun battles for the entirety of the race, swapping positions a handful of times and having a couple minor off-track moments, especially at the start of the race, but we'll sweep on through the final corner. And a busy night, but a successful one for Jason Leach of Operation Motorsport.
I suspect that's a fun race for Jason. He was right there in the thick of things, by and large, and that's what you enjoy, the opportunity to go side by side, wheel to wheel with some of your friends, whether it's in sim racing or in the real thing.
Last corner for Jackson Rusin, who will pick up the final spot on the podium for the AM category in the Acura NSX GT3 across the start-finish line here at Silverstone. And Jackson Rusin had a couple offs and spins, but made it through. Will pick up third in class and a 5th overall. John Willeman just outside in 6th. And Bill Clark also, no Bill Clark here, at least in this one, just on the timing and scoring screen for whatever reason. Jimmy Morgan brings that car across the line, the 280. Going to need some new body work, but finished the race.
Yes, he did. I got to give props to Willeman as well. He was really charging there on that last lap, and kicked that thing sideways as he was charging, trying to do something about Rusin. Did a good job to save it, and just outside the podium, but a good run in that Lexus nevertheless.
Well, in just a moment, we'll show you your race results here for round number 3 of the CrowdStrike Cup Virtual Racing League. Again, my name is Kyle Heyer with Ryan Marine. If you're interested in learning about the real-world schedule, CrowdStrikeRacing.com is where you're going to go. CrowdStrikeRacing.com/Sonoma is where you'll go to pick up the live stream of the first round of the season, the first weekend in March at Sonoma Raceway in Sonoma, California. A handful of CrowdStrike Racing machines going to be out there on the racetrack. Of course, the return of Colin Brown, of Ryan DL, David Askew, CJ Moses, George Kurtz, and so many more. Aaron Vogel, Michael Cooper. I'm probably forgetting 1 or 2 or 3 because there's a whole lot of CrowdStrike Racing cars out there, Ryan, and they're going to look really good and be very competitive.
No question about it. A big step up for the DXDT team, which is associated with CrowdStrike Racing, and I think it figures to be a big year. Again, talking to David Askew, the team owner, they've got aspirations to win the Pro-Am Championship in Fanatec GT World Challenge America, powered by AWS. Came very, very close a year ago, and I think they've got 3 lineups that can do just that here in 2021, and we'll get the season started in just a few short weeks.
So exciting things coming. There is a look at your race results for CrowdStrike Cup Virtual Racing League round number 3, the AM race here. Again, Youngblood picking up the official victory in AM. Jason Leach and Jackson Rusin rounding out the rest of the podium. Another spectacular event. The next event will be on March 11th for the CrowdStrike Cup Virtual Racing League. We'll be heading to the Hungaroring, a racetrack that I know very little about, Ryan, so that's going to be an exciting one for me. Never really seen this racetrack or competed on it nonetheless, so I'm sure it'll be new to a lot of others as well.
Yeah, I suspect you're right. Tight and twisty. It has a reputation of being very difficult to pass on, but it's also got a reputation for producing some unexpected winners, at least in its Formula One guys, and perhaps that kind of unexpected nature will transition to GT racing. I certainly hope so. It should be fun, and I plan on learning a bit more about the history of the track. I think it was the first track to host a Formula One race behind the Iron Curtain when it opened up, but other than that, I don't have a whole lot of tidbits on it, so excited to learn a little bit more in the time that we have in between tonight and that night.
So exciting things coming up in 2021 for CrowdStrike Racing. Again, I'm Kyle Heyer with Ryan Marine. Thanks so much for watching. Make sure to subscribe to the CrowdStrike Racing YouTube channel and also follow CrowdStrike Racing on Twitter and Facebook and all the social media places to be in tune and in touch with what's happening this year on the racetrack and off it here in the CrowdStrike Cup Virtual Racing League and in Fanatec GT World Challenge America, powered by AWS. I need my practice myself, Ryan, to get that right. Going to be saying it a whole lot of times this year. So thanks again for watching and joining us here tonight from Silverstone Circuit. We'll see you again on March 11th for CrowdStrike Cup Virtual Racing League, round number 4.